Yo everyone, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Back to Scratch by Ibiza Bible and Decadance Radio. I'm your host, Taylor Budd, and I'm here to interview the best DJs, performers and record labels in the business, and of course, talking everything Ibiza. This week's guest brings up a lot of memories for me, and it's because of this person that I first got a taste of what dance music was all about growing up in the 90s. As a kid, I fell in love with the sound from the many albums on my mum's CD collection, and I know I'm not the only one out there. So joining me on this week's episode of Back to Scratch is one of the all-time legends in the industry that not only created multiple world-renowned labels, but quite literally shaped an entire era and community. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Doyle, the founder of the original Hedkandi, and now the founder of Fierce Angel. How you doing? Nice to see you. How you been?
I've taken a break from shaping things. I've had time off of shaping, melding young minds. It's been a quiet. I've been in semi-retirement for a year, darling. Yeah. I've decided I gave it all up. Lucky it coincided with COVID, so I was incredibly lucky that I decided to take early retirement just for a year while COVID was on.
COVID has been just a pleasure, really, hasn't it? Like a gift to us all, a little detox that we all.
The fact that I've not been working is a gift to us all. What are you saying exactly? Listen, we're just starting this conversation, and you're already telling me that me taking a year off has been good for you.
I was
very offensive.
I was referring to COVID, but okay.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, no, it's been a weird one, hasn't it? It is what it is. You know, we decided very early, possibly one of the only people in the world that can, return to a brand who's been away from for 15 years and go, yes, let's set up events and do all sorts of things, and then not be able to do them. So, we kind of just decided that we were going to, carry on pushing the brand forward. We're going to give Fierce Angel a little rest, let Hedkandi come to the forefront. Do the radio show with Hedkandi, do lots of live streams. One of the only people in Ibiza last summer doing stuff. And that was purely because of all these different sort of ideas that we put together and sort of went, well, if we can't do events and stuff, why don't we, rather than, as much as I thought people wanted to look at me in my living room, like everybody else, with one little light going, here's me live stream. Live from the kitchen, a bit like we are now. We said, well, what we would do basically is we go out in the garden, do a massive sort of proper DJ setup and film it as if it was live and do a live stream from there. And that then kind of grew to approaching hotels in Ibiza and saying, well, look, we'll do the party here and we'll film it and we'll play it to everybody else. Basically, two fingers up to everyone else who can't come. Yeah, look at us by the pool. But it worked out really well. And it's been tough. We have had little or no assistance, like many of the people in our community. Everyone that, I kind of know either has a limited company that they run themselves or are freelance. And we've fallen through those gaps, and a lot of it's great to say, well, there's things out there to apply for your profits. But a lot of people that we go up and down, in our last 3 years, profits are non-existent. We deliberately moved out to a house in the countryside to free up space for a studio and things like that are paid for by the business, but they're not rateable premises. So we don't get any of that help either.
Yeah.
So it's been a challenge. And at the start of the year, I was very much like, yes, I'm going to, do my spreadsheets and I can work out how long we can continue to do this before I basically have to eat the dog. Luckily, we've got quite a big dog, so that's all right. It's going to last a while. Then I'm moving on to the cats. But yeah, I mean, so it's been a tough one. It's been very tough. It's been just as tough as it has for. We are very lucky because we live in a very, very nice place. Live in a very tiny village that we deliberately went. We're going to get out of London and we're going to move to somewhere that's very quiet. I can, there are trains and buses and things. You can get to where you need to be. You don't have to, in the wonders of the internet, you don't have to do any, live where you work. So we're very lucky. We kind of moved out to basically live in Dibley, which is where we live. It's like, thatched cottages and just amazingness and lovely, lovely people as well. So that's kind of kept us sane. And we've done lots of things like dressing up in inflatable costumes and going around the village. We did a whole village people thing. What we'll do is when this goes online, I'll include a bunch of links where you can watch Mark Doyle dressed as the village people going around, or as 6 dinosaurs. There's a problem when creative people have nothing creative to do, is they find something to do.
I was going to say, I love the shirt that you're sporting right now. Lovely floral.
Hawaiian.
It's a dad shirt, as we like to say.
It's an Amazon purchase. What can I say? We've loved Amazon. Oh, we know our delivery driver now. He's like our best mate. He's like, oh, morning, another package. And you're kind of doing that thing that you used to do when you were hungover or a little bit the worse for wear, where you might order something a bit rubbish online or go to a shop and buy something not very appropriate. We used to do it from gigs. We'd come out of gigs and we'd go to bed and we'd all be very hungover the next day. And there used to be an amazing Harvey Nicks out Birmingham in the mall centre, whatever that's called, mail centre or whatever.
Yeah.
And we used to go shopping there, either before the gigs, get something new, or afterwards. I've got a completely horrendous Tinkerbell shirt, Tinkerbell t-shirt with Tink on it. Very nice. Kind of got holes in it and stuff. It was worn by a much younger Mark who used to go clubbing a lot more, who thought that was a good idea. Pale blue, pastel blue.
Tinkerbell.
Pastel blue with glitter on it, as I recall. And it was about 50 quid. And it was in Harvey Nicks, so you used to make those purchases when you were, a little bit. Same thing with COVID. You're sitting and you're like that. Got no money, and but look at this thing on Amazon, and this thing on Amazon it's quite cheap, isn't it? And look what eBay's worse than Amazon, because eBay you're getting the bidding.
Oh yeah.
I've been buying all sorts of nonsense. Oh, you want to come around my house and see what I've got. But yeah, so you kind of get, but Hawaiian shirts are a go-to, and I've kind of got used to wearing them. I like to be against what everyone else is doing. So I will go down to Lidl in the wind and the rain with a pair of shorts and a Hawaiian shirt on. I must say, I haven't quite got to the bit where I'm going down there in my pajamas or my dressing gown.
Not yet.
With the bunny slippers. I'm quite proud of the fact that I've not gone down that rabbit hole.
We're not out of the pandemic yet. You still got a few more months.
I've got a few more months. Just as like June the 20th, before the clubs reopen. And he's like, no, he's there. He's at Aldi and he's in his fluffy puppy slippers.
BBC News, Mark Doyle, founder of Hedkandi. Right, Mark, I want to get onto a little game to start off the show. Little old game of 2 truths and 1 lie, which I'm hoping you have prepared for us.
I have visual aids as well.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, no. Big excited.
Go on, hit me.
God, you'd like that. Okay. I am a massive fan of children's TV show, The Magic Roundabout. Question 2, or statement 2. Statement 2. I have never owned a pair of CDJ players, Nexus 2000, 1000, or otherwise.
Okay.
Statement 3.
I'm listening.
During lockdown, I have become extremely adept in finishing in both sanding, staining, and oiling wood surfaces.
Right, I'm going to work through this.
Wait for him. Come on.
Right, so number 1, I'm going to go straight off. Like, look, you're wearing the shirt. You've already told me about all your dinosaurs and whatnot. I'm not going to rule that one out. I feel like
you think there's an inner child still there.
There is an inner child still there, definitely. Number 2, so this one, I'm pretty sure you not owning CDJs, you would say that to throw me off because, come on, But it's hard to believe. 20 years and you've never owned CDJs. What was the last one again? Sanding. See, now every man during lockdown has become a DIY guru. So I can believe it. Well, so they believe anyway. So I'm going to go with number. The CDJ. You have never owned a pair of CDJs.
Okay, well, first of all, eBay purchase, may I point out, won that in an eBay auction. Hold on, no.
For those that can't see what's going on and are listening.
Oh yeah, this doesn't work on podcast, by the way, or mixed out anywhere like that. But if you're doing the visual version, oh my God, the wonders that will be revealed.
Mark is holding up a pair of Magic Roundabout toys that he has purchased off of eBay.
I used to have these when I was young, but I think my mother gave them away to someone more deserving when I grew up. And so I've been repurchasing them.
So that one is true. That one is
totally and utterly true. Magic Roundabout, huge fan.
Love that.
We could do an hour show on the Magic Roundabout, let me tell you. Anyway, moving on from that. That one is true. And if I could tilt the camera down, in fact, you know what? I might just, if you can see there, that table.
I want to touch it. That looks smooth.
That is Osmo Pollux oil. Let me know. I didn't even know that stuff existed before lockdown. No. This was done on not only a 40, but a 120 grit sander, and then treated with Osmo Pollux oil, which I'm told is one of the better oils for refinishing your wood. We went with a matte clear on this. Had a bit of a honey tinge to it, but as I think you'll gather, you may well have been right. No CDJs have ever been in this house.
That's crazy to think. That is mental.
It's weird. I mean, basically, I always had access to them. It was something that, again, my more, sort of sensible, £2,000 each. Buy those. We've obviously got the decks here. We've got the, and we've always had the decks. I've got about I've got 2 pairs of them, and they come out every so often. But the actual CD players, no, because I was either in a nightclub, twice a week, just using them, or I'll be in a radio station, or doing a radio show where they had them in a studio, doing it there, and it kind of never got to. It never became a thing that I needed. To tell you the truth, I mean, we're very lucky now that we've done a deal with the lovely people at Denon, plug, and we've got some SC6000s, which are things of stunning beauty that I'm now, and it is. I'm like, how did I ever do without these in the house? I've managed for 20 years. So yes, you are right. You clever man.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it was just such a contrast to the other ones. It was hard to not get that. You made that easy for me there, Mark.
Anyone, I think of anyone that knows me,
knows that you love the Magic Roundabout.
If I tell you what, he's not popping up quite as well as he used to. Which is kind of the story of our lives as we get older.
Let's move on to the music side of things. And I want to start with you first. The show's called Back to Scratch. So let's go back to scratch. How did it all start for you? How did radio come about? How did you fall in love with music?
People talk about sort of a life-changing experience or something with music. But that was it. It was like really early days, sort of soul to soul in the Balearic scene. And it kind of just appealed to me because it was songs and it was quirky things, or it was things with hooks, rather than sort of, it was disco essentially. And I've been brought up on Motown and soul and things like that. And we went back to our club night, And basically our club night used to be the after office party. Everyone was in suits and we'd all be dancing to Loco in Acapulco and shit like that. And I just went, right, I'm going to go and buy house. I'm going to go and buy house music. And of course, I'm 18 years old and we're walking away with a reasonable amount of money on the door for an 18-year-old. I think we're getting about 800 quid each a week. And I just went down to City Sounds in London and I went, I'll just buy it all. I haven't got a clue what I'm buying. I'll just buy it. I'm going to buy, when I listened to things that I liked, and we'd sit there and there'd be a guy called Dave at City Sounds in London, and you'd all be there in a group on a Saturday. And he'd be going, right, I've got this one, I'm going to put it on. Who wants one? He'd have 10 of them and you'd go out in the crowd. It was like a market stall. It was hilarious. And it'd be like, oh, I've got this one. It's really weird. It slows down in the middle, and I've only got 3 copies of it. It goes all slow, and there's a woman. Sounds like she's having an orgasm. I got French. It was a test pressing of French Kiss. So I'm like, oh, there's a gimmick there. I love a gimmick. I love a bit of this, and I'll have that one. It's got some singing on it. Oh yeah, big pianos. And then I discovered Trax Records in Greek Street, which was obviously a guy called Craig was there doing all records. And that was all the Italian stuff and all the Balearic and things, all this sort of high energy. And I'd be buying lots of that and we'd be taking them back to the club and playing all these records. And all of a sudden, we've suddenly become this, all of a sudden, 88, 89, become this super trendy nightclub, Friday, part of that movement. And Brandon Block and Rocky and Diesel and that were doing this, then moved into doing the Sundays at the same place, and West London had this whole thing going on. And that's kind of where it sort of all started from, and I basically continued from there. And then I did a lot of, and because I was never snobby about it, I was always more about DJing to get a reaction, to get people to, hey, look, the other part of this, if this hadn't worked out, I'd have been a redcoat at Butlins, because center of attention, let's have some fun. Luckily it did work out, God help me, I ended up like Shane Ritchie or someone. But for me, it's always been about the music and the atmosphere, and the never trying to really follow a trend or trying to be, we're doing this next. It's always been about that thing I love, which is that, you're playing Grandmaster Flash, and then you're playing Numero Uno, and then you can just be doing anything you want. And it's about just feeling good. So that's kind of, and it carried on from then. I was still doing sort of club nights in the evenings and even doing odd DJing things and, all over the place. And I gradually, but during the day, what I needed was jobs that would, because we were promoting our own nights and stuff, you often lost lots of money. Okay. So I needed a job during the day. It's not all fun, kids. It's not all vast sums of money and packets of God knows what. It's usually like, oh, really? And I made no money tonight. Thank you very much. So I used to have, need a job. And I'd always kind of had Saturday jobs in retail, and I worked in shops, quite a lot, children's shops. It's great. I was in charge. I was manager of 2 children's stores. God help me. I used to go and play with the toys on Saturday morning after being out all night. You'd be like,
you get all your enthusiasm and your love for the Magic Roundabout.
No, this was before that. I'm very childish nature, let's say. But anyway, so I did that, and then I kind of worked in call centres, and they were brilliant because in the days before the internet, kids, you used to have phone numbers come up on your TV for buying stuff. You want to buy this record? Sentimental Journey, 7-disc pack of 50s records. Call Teledisc now and order your cassettes. And basically, obviously what people kind of forget is before it was all automated and there was Amazon, it was you rang someone and someone answered the phone. And these people were not in foreign countries. These people were in Brentford. And you could basically go and work anytime you wanted. 4 in, go and do a 6-hour shift. Because these things are 24-hour things. So I basically went in there and just went, this is heaven. I can crawl in, and all I have to do is sit in a corner on a phone and answer it and sell people nonsense. Brilliant. And just shit you do not want. absolute rubbish you do not want at 4 o'clock in the morning. And they're up in there going, hello, I want to buy one of those. You know it's a piece of shit, don't you? Yes, okay, but I want 2 of them. Good for you. Thank you very much. I'll do one of those. So, and it was the best job in the world. No responsibility, limited brain function. And you got paid reasonably well. So, and you could do it whenever you wanted. So it fitted around me working all weekend. And we did that, and we kind of then moved into another sales job online, and it's all this sort of telesales stuff. And a company that were using this service was Jazz FM. They were using it to, if people heard something on the radio station, you could ring up and say, what was that? It was 10 o'clock and it had a bugle on it or something, would you like to buy it? And we would then try and sell you it. And obviously from a music background, I kind of got in there and ended up kind of running it for some reason. It's like, oh, it's direct marketing, which is ultimately common sense. If you bought this, does this sound like it? And can I get you to buy it as well? Because, and can I write something nice? So we were kind of taking these calls from people at Jazz FM, and they were saying they liked certain records. I would then go off and find other records that sounded like those records, and we'd make brochures that arrived through the post, posted to people. And we kind of designed these things and sent them out. And it was very lucky because Jazz FM was kind of this niche station where people didn't, kind of hear music they heard on all the other radio stations. And it wasn't very easy to buy either, because you had to go into the jazz department of HMV, and speak to the bloke who was in charge of the jazz department, who generally didn't want you in his jazz department because you weren't really into jazz. And that kind of taught me that there's a market out there. There were ways, and this is before you could have everything now, whenever you want it, however you want it. And it was very much a time where, if you wanted something that was a little bit hard to find, there wasn't an easy way of getting it. So this ultimately, the service that they were offering Jazz FM didn't really work, because you just had to have 1 million people on the phones all the time to sell one record. It's days before the internet, kids. Remember this?
Crazy how much everything has changed now.
Yeah, I mean, and you kind of, the simplicity of that. But Jazz FM, because this service closed, Jazz FM was sort of like, oh, well, you were in charge of all this at this company. Why don't you come and work for us? And let's see if there's, we were earning some money out of this. And there was a thing with, there's a very, very good phrase in jazz, which says, how do you make £5 million out of jazz? And you start with £20 million. Because there's no way of making money anyway, because it's a very specialist thing, and it was just generally difficult to sort of market to people. Anyway, I went in and I said, look, this doesn't work, but they're only calling up for one track you're playing, and we're selling the entire album. So why don't we just take that one track and that one track and that one track, put them all on one album, and let's not call it jazz, because jazz scares people. That's like would you like to read a book on flight navigation for the under 12s? No. So let's call it Smooth Moods. Let's make it sound inoffensive and just have all the records on it that you've heard on jazz. Now, this to me is common sense, not so much to other people. And they went, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Why don't we do that? And we did it, and it sold really well. And of course,
you haven't even finished the story yet, and I can already tell where this is going and how it.
This is going, how it evolved. So basically, they let me do another one, and it was great. And then we were kind of doing some quite cool stuff on Jazz FM, and I was like, "Oh, can we do a bit of acid jazz? Can we go over there and we'll do these?" And we did a series called Spirit of the Street, which was much more sort of like jazz funk. And then I went, "Oh, it's a really good idea. What if we put records on a compilation that I think people would like, but you're not playing?" Because I always had this back with Jazz FM, trying to get them to play records that I wanted them. I'm like, why aren't you playing any Erykah Badu? Why don't you play a bit of Jamiroquai? And they're like, oh, no, jazz. And there was this problem with Jazz FM being the only jazz radio station in the UK. that they had the jazz police after them, and the jazz police are scary. They're like, why aren't you playing records that sound like someone's dropped a piano down the stairs for 12 minutes?
The jazz.
Whereas there's all this brilliant music, you know, that we could play, like Jamiroquai and you know, the Acid Jazz label and all this amazing music that was out there. As soon as they started playing it, like, oh, that's not jazz. You know, you are the one, you are the bastion of jazz music, and you shall never play anything other than, you know, Ella Fitzgerald. So, and this was a constant battle for Jazz FM, because to keep their license, they had to have a promise of performance. They had to say, you know, this is what we do. So they're in this rock and a hard place. So I was like, look, the CD compilations that we're doing, there's your way to get more music out to these people that maybe they want to listen to, that you can't give them because of all these problems. And we can turn, and surely more people will want to buy the more commercial version of this. So you're going to make more money, and the money you're not making on Jazz FM, because they were losing. I mean, Jazz FM lost money every year, you know, and it had some very nice investors, but it always lost money.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, this could be, and they went, okay then, Mark, and this was kind of the conversation we had every time I came up with an idea, which was, all right then, Mark, but if it doesn't work,
I'm done. Just brush
it doesn't work, we get to get rid of you. You know, and I was like, constant thorn in their side. Like, they were like, we have to tolerate this person because he keeps making us money, and we kind of don't like him very much because he keeps doing stuff, and we're going, well, it will never work, and then it does. So I went, okay, right, what we're going to do, we're going to call it New Cool. And we're going to call it New Cool, and we're going to put all this really cool, you know, sort of jazz, funk, soul, a little bit of hip hop, you know, we'll do that. So we do this album, and it sells. Not only does it sell in the UK, but suddenly it's selling abroad as well. We have these amazing distributors called Flute, and this guy called Duncan, who, again, in the old days, would go and visit all these people in the countries, and by then we were starting to see sort of these very cool compilations come out, like Costes and things like that you know, were in France and stuff, and very sort of small boutique compilations of this sort of acid jazz and chill out music and stuff. Cafe Del Mar was just starting up, and it sold, and it sold like 3 times as many abroad. And so of course they've come back and gone, oh, this was quite good. Yeah, there was never any money for me. It was like, no, we've made the money. Thank you very much.
Just like those promotion days again, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like, la, la. So anyway, they basically sort of went, okay, well, off you go, then do another. And I went, okay. And then basically, because it's like, rather than just sit there and go, we'll just do another one of those, why don't we put it in some really nice packaging? And and the weird thing was, and I want to put something on the front that represents, but it's not a picture of a girl with a cocktail in her hand. I want something unique and special. And I was on a train somewhere, we were going off somewhere, and I opened this magazine, and one of the very earliest clubs that we went to was a club called Pushka. And Pushka can only be described as a UK version of Manumission. It was very, very polysexual. It was absolutely amazing. And it was always in very special spaces and, you know, drag queens. And it was all about the production and the music and the vibe. And they had these most amazing flyers drawn by this guy that was at university in Brighton. And I'd always looked at them and gone, they're really good fashion illustrations. And I've gone, they're amazing. Wouldn't it be great to get something like that? I opened this magazine, and the same artist from 5 years before is now doing work for, and he'd done some emerging new artists for Fabergé. And this thing fell out, and I went, that's him. That is definitely the guy that did the flyers from those parties 3 or 4 years ago. And there was a number at the bottom, and I rang him up and I went, have you ever done an album cover? And he was like, no. And I was like, want to do one? I can't give you very much money because they won't give me any money at all, but could be quite good if we did it. And if it works, we'll put you on all of them. And he went, all right then. He didn't actually. He was much better spoken than that. All right then. I'd love to have a go at that. And so we did this thing that had this girl on the cover, illustration, and the first side was very in line with what we did on New Cool 1. And the second side, I'm like, okay, we're going to get some masters at work on there. And we're going to get, but it's all going to be unmixed, and it's going to be the full 12-inch versions. And there used to be a series called Master Cuts, which was my go-to for this whole thing, where they went and found amazing records, and you only got the 12-inch version. And the weird thing was that before this even started up, before I'd gone to Jazz FM, the company that I'd worked for had ended up being owned by Universal Records. And obviously they were trying to find us jobs within Universal. And I ended up in the compilation department, where I sat with this woman and said, all compilations, it's all 65 club hits in Ibiza. It's 2 minutes of each record by a famous DJ. As someone who loves music, I can't stand it, because To Be in Love is 12 minutes long, and that's what should be on the compilation. No, because when we mix them and we do that, we get more on them, and that idea will never work. And I went, okay then, and I left. I was like, can't we just do it not with a DJ, with some sort of nice packaging, full 12-inch versions? And they went, nah, never work, never be successful at that. So anyway, that's why I ended up at Jazz FM. So the second CD of New Cool 2 has house music on it. And what we know, very funky house music, George Benson remixed by Masters at Work and so forth. And we put the CD out, and it sells twice as many as the first one.
Wow.
So Jazz FM then come back to me again and go, right, well, that was really good as well. We really liked that. That was fantastic. We loved the money. But it's not really Jazz FM, is it? I was like, well, yeah, we are getting into, we do have, a number of Masters at Work remixes on there and some house records. And yeah, you're right. But you know what? Look how much it's sold. Well, is there a way of us doing this without doing it on Jazz FM? And I went, well, let me tell you an idea that I've had, which is kind of what we were working towards. Why don't we start up a new record label? It could be part of Jazz FM Records, but it could be completely different. And we could also put the music on air. But in the middle of the night, when you're not really broadcasting anything and no one really cares, and you don't really care about the listeners or anything, we could put 4 to 6 hours together after 12 o'clock on a Friday or a Saturday, where we do this sort of music, and it won't affect you at all. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay, what are we going to call it? I went, well, let me tell you. Here we go. Why don't we call it Hedkandi? Hedkandi? Well, if it looks good and it sounds good and it's all your senses are in your head and it's candy for it's Hedkandi. And they went, that's great. And I said, we're going to do them in these lovely packages with a magnet on them. So when you get home and you've got the chill out version and you get home from a club, you can spend 3 hours at 4 a.m. doing that with the magnet on the back and just playing, listening to the music and playing with the magnet, because it's the most fun you'll have at that time with all your mates. And we kind of, to give them their due, no one else would have indulged my madness as much as they did. And it's great that they did. And we had an amazing time. I had some of the most fantastic arguments about things. I need this. I need a gold settee to be able to concentrate. It never really got that bad, but they kind of, all the things that we wanted to do with the brand and how we wanted to present it, I got to do, which you would never get to do with a normal record label. But what they were seeing was they were suddenly going, there is money. When he does this, we get this. This is a wonderful thing.
They just do complete free reign, and you delivered.
Yeah. And it basically, within 3 years, I think 2 to 3 years, launching Hedkandi, we put Jazz FM into profit for the first time, and that was just that record label. And obviously then off the back of that, we did Stereo Sushi, which was just basically, we had so many great records for the Beach House albums, but it was very much one of the fights that I did have all the time was like, we are only making 8 albums a year. We are only doing one of each of these albums because it's going to be like Ferrari. We've got to sell it for a high price. It's going to be special. It can't just be something that's out every other week. You know, every one of these we get has to be kind of collectible, and you know, there's a physicality to everything that we did. And
now
so
05, now 06, now 07, now 08.
7. Yeah. This week it's now 08, but 0.2.0.0. So yeah, and it was kind of, so a way around not doing more Hedkandi albums than we needed to was to launch Stereo Sushi, because there was some great deep house records. So we launched that. And then off the chill out stuff we were doing, there were just loads of really great weird artists we were meeting. So we launched this thing called the Acid Lounge, which I'm actively trying to bring back now, because I think it was no one bought it. And no one understood it at all, but it came with a comic, and you could read the story of these guys that were, you know, sort of on this musical journey, and like, it would be a brilliant Netflix show now. I
love that.
Say that.
Interactive, I love it.
Oh, it was completely interactive before there was interactive. But all these things we got to do, and luckily none of them really lost money. And compared to the monster that Hedkandi was, I mean, it was very much a case of like keeping that special, you know, and keeping it, you know, the way that we wanted it to be, and only doing very limited things and stuff. And then, you know, we launched the club nights, and we launched the club nights at a club called Rouge in London. And 3 times as many, 3,000 people turned up to get into a 1,000 capacity club. The queue went right down Tottenham Court Road, round the entire building and back again.
Wow.
And everything, and kind of just everything we did from there just had that thing. And it was very much down to the team that I had as well, because everyone that we had with us, we were part of the family. We were very much that sort of, it was very much a sort of Google philosophy before there was Google. And we, you know, kind of, we'd all come into work, we'd all work our asses off. We, you know, like the people that worked there, heart and soul into it, but we had such a great time doing it. No one would come in on Monday because we'd all been out all weekend. We're like, Monday's our day off, we're not coming in. Tuesdays, no one would talk to each other. I literally made it a rule. Like, we're sitting in the office, you're like, no one interact with anybody else. Terrible Tuesday. You're all going to burst into tears or have an argument. So let's just stop that. And then Wednesday, Thursday would be great. Friday we'd knock off early and go down the pub. But we got the work done, and we did it really well. And there was that, you know, that whole thing about how you treat your staff and making it more like, for all of us that was there, a lot of the time it was very much, it was like a hobby that we got paid to do. It was the most amazing thing. And Jazz FM kind of let us do our thing, because we were the people that they'd bring people into and go, these are the lunatics, but they make us lots of money. So, you know, all the other stuff was, you know, it was like the sales floor and the music programming floor, and then he came up to us and was like, here are the nutters, you know. We'd all be sitting there like dressed up and whatever, you know, on Fancy Dress Friday or what. It was crazy. And unfortunately, you know, these things, they come to an end. You know, we did the most amazing nights in Ibiza. They're some of the best times of my life. And it's interesting to know whether we could have continued doing it in that way, or whether we would have had to, at some point, you know, sort of bring in commercial factors and being responsible for the monster we created. I kind of think, with a little bit more experience, and bear in mind this all happened very, very quickly. It was in the space of about 4 years. It was very quick to sort of grow up from going, well, we're managing artists now. Oh my God, what are we doing? And we kind of, what happened was Jazz FM was bought out by the Guardian Media Group. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of Hedkandi. I mean, everything was usually, it was a very light-hearted battle with Jazz FM, because they had seen the whole journey. They, you know, we had made them lots of money, and they let us kind of, you know, within certain restrictions. I need a gold unicorn to ride into work on. You're not getting one of those. Oh, okay then. You know, within certain restrictions, they were always really good to us, really good to me. And then we had this thing where basically the Guardian Media Group wanted a radio license. Weren't interested in Hedkandi, weren't interested so much in Jazz FM as a company or a business. What they wanted was a radio license, and you could not get one for love nor money. And they basically came in and paid 3 times, I think it was the share value of the company. So of course, all of the big bosses are like, always share options. They're like, happy days, we're off, and it kind of left us with the Guardian Media Group, and I found myself sitting in front of a board of directors. And the interesting thing about the Guardian is that it's because it's a trust. They don't really have shareholders. They're a charitable trust. They were set up years ago to run a newspaper and become this massive thing. So you're not really answering to shareholders. You're answering to people who are in charge who just have an idea of what they're doing. And the people at the Guardian Media Group in the radio stuff had a very fixed idea of what radio was and how radio should be. And they took one look at us and just went, nah, no, you should not be on the radio. You do not have a voice for radio. I've got a face for radio, but I don't have a voice, apparently. Don't have a voice. And basically what became of this sort of a slow thing of erosion where they were just they were like, everything's far too much about you. I mean, we need to have someone else who chooses the records and someone else who presents. I was like, this is kind of how it works, because a lot of this comes from me. It's my choice of records. It's going to the club. It is and I'm not going to compare myself to anybody else, but you look at any amazing brand and they have someone there that anyone that's disrupted the industry, they have someone there that has defined what it is they do and how they do it and has fought for that company and has, and that was their
essentially. Hedkandi was an extension of you, so for them to kind of drag that away from you it takes the essence away from Hedkandi.
Yeah, and it makes it a lot less interesting for me as well, because I am a control freak. I like to say everyone in our office was allowed an opinion as long as it finished up with the same one as I had. That was kind of it. But they came in and they did all that, and then there was some issue. They basically went, okay, we need to hire a professional. So they went off to Sony and they hired someone reasonably high up in Sony. And there's another great saying in the record industry that says everyone gets hired to the level of their own incompetence, which means the only reason you stop getting promoted is because you've got that job and you can't actually do the one you've got.
Yeah.
And they hired this guy, and he came in, and I was all I'll find a way to work with it. I am the most happy, gregarious person. You're going to be in charge of the department. You will see everything we've done and my team has done, and we will be fine. And he walked in, he went, I'm going to launch an R&B label. And I went, we've got this thing here, and I went, okay, well, you could do that. I don't really want to be involved in that because what we're doing here works quite well. I think we made about £10 million so far. We're everywhere around the world. UK R&B is not that good.
I would be in the exact same mindset as you. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of R&B.
I think, any good... There is great. I mean, Beverly Knight and Jamiroquai and Incognito. We have some brilliant... But is it R&B as perceived by a US R&B, and do they do it better a lot of the time? Nowadays, yes, because it's easier to, promote these things and push them around the world. Anyway, he was like that, and he was like, I want to allocate X million pounds to launch these 3 acts. And I was like, right, and where's that money coming from? Well, you're going to make it for us over there in Hedkandi. And that's we were just coming off the back of having 3 massive hits with Put 'Em High, Stonebridge, Put 'Em High, Take Me Away. And we'd done his album. We'd done it on an absolute... Everything we did wasn't cheap, but because everyone loved what we did, they either wanted to work with us, and I would say, well, if you re-release your album on Hedkandi, it's going to be successful, but I'm not giving you £50,000 up front. You can have enough money to make the album, and then we'll all make some money afterwards, but we're not doing the whole go get in a limousine from the airport and all that. There's your bus ticket. Come and join us on the road. And everything worked into everything else that we released promos by the artists. We took the artists out on tour. The artists could earn more money doing live PAs at our gigs. Bearing in mind, you were having up to sort of 2 to 3 Hedkandi events a week, every weekend, and they were massive. So,
and this was worldwide as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and this was worldwide. It was like, where do you want to go? Because we'll send you there. Off you go, Australia. I once did Australia in It was 2 lots of 48 hours in the time it took me to fly there, got off the plane, got changed, went to the club, did a DJ set, come out of the club, went and had another shower, got back on the plane, came back home, then flew to Oslo to do another gig, and then flew somewhere else. And by the end of it, 4 days later, I woke up and I had the worst panic attack because I did not know. I woke up in the dark and did not know where I was or what country or what time, just everything. It's just like, we do so many gigs. It's like, what room are we staying into? I'm with 306. No, that was last night. No, it was 312. No, and you'd literally write them on your hand. So it's all amazing. It's all fantastic. They hire this guy, and he absolutely just ruins it to the point where I'm being called in for the most inappropriate talks about why we need to hire someone because they do not fit with his idea of what the company image is, and this will be down to race or sexuality, and I'm like, this is Hedkandi. We are literally the most, open, free, polyset. Like everything about this label is about
diversity.
Before it all became very trendy and all of that sort of all very necessary. Even that's what we were. We were, we were 50% in Pasha. We were probably one of the only mixed clubs where it was truly mixed, and everyone kind of got on with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm having these conversations about race and sexuality, and I'm like, you want me? And he was like, well, don't you think she's a bit? And you'd be like, and at that point I'm going, how can I work here? I'm arguing for people's jobs. We had 2 albums, one by Peyton, one by Bonnie Bailey, and we'd just come off the back of huge success with Stonebridge. And I took these 2 albums in, and he went, I've listened to them. The fact that he's gay bothers me. And she can't sing and she can't write. And at that point I went, well, this is it then. This is where I leave, because where do I go from here?
What year was this, Mark?
This was end of 2004. I left summer 2005.
Wow.
And with 5 years, this was in the space of 5 years, all this had happened. And I look back at it and I always sort of go, this seemed like it was far longer. And it wasn't. It was a very, we launched in 99 and I was gone by halfway through 2005.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, we'd been around the world twice. We'd sold millions of CDs. We'd had a number 3 hit in the UK with Stonebridge. Absolute crazy town to walk away. Now, in hindsight, many years later, and after running my own business for a number of years, you said you could have played the game and gone to the directors and got this bloke sacked, and possibly, but he was very incumbent. He was very, very sort of, he fitted with their overall company image, whereas we were the lunatics. And it was just one of those things of like going, well, we can go and recreate this thing again. Of course we can. Let's go off and do it, sort of thing. And I did a Jerry Maguire where I went, I'm leaving. Who's coming with me? And we took half of the team with us. We took the artist Jason Brooks.
That's nice.
And that's when we were going to relaunch, not as Fierce Angel, but we were going to relaunch as another brand. And they then took us to court, and we ended up in court for 6 months.
I was going to get onto this because a lot of people certainly in my generation, will just know Hedkandi for the countless albums that were on my mum's CD collection. That is how I got into dance music, because of all the Hedkandi albums that were just stacked there. And I don't think a lot of people know what happened with the whole court proceedings and where Hedkandi went, because obviously it's split. You've all changed.
Yeah, I mean, it's all online. It's all online, kids. If you're clever enough, you can find the court documents, because that was fun. Having all your friends give evidence against you. Basically, we were cheeky. We were very cheeky in that I never had because the company had been bought by Jazz FM and they hadn't given me a new contract or a contract I was happy with. I hadn't signed anything, and they let me go on without a contract for a year. And obviously in that time, we saw what was happening and the nightmare that was going on. So I went, okay, then let's go and do this, and this. And I felt, it wasn't mine, but I felt that it was my idea and my concept, but unfortunately, when you work for another company, they own the rights. The amount of people that have said to me, "Well, you sold Hedkandi." I was like, if I'd have owned it, I'd have never sold it. Are you insane? But no, I know, it was Jazz FMs, and then it was the Guardian Media Groups, and so I saw the way this was going, and I just disagreed with everything creatively. I came back and had a conversation with my wife, and we were on target to earn a lot of. It was just at that point where we'd always I got paid well, and the gigs I got paid very well for, but we were just at that point where I was about to get some really good bonuses, and it was going to kind of take you from nice amount of money to let's go buy a house money. And I said, most people are like, let's go and buy buckets of drugs. I'm like, no, go buy a house. Much more sensible. But yeah, and that was kind of like, and I had to come home and I said, look, this is, I seriously think I'm gonna have some mental health problems, or I'd already had a couple of very wobbly moments where you're not happy and you're out drinking, you're overdoing things. You were going out to parties and overdoing things because you're living the dream, but you're not actually enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
To sort of go and do the most amazing party in the world, and then come back on Monday and have a conversation about why you shouldn't sack this person because you don't agree with his politics, or why you should not release this album because this person's sexuality, was just like destroying anything that was anything to do with that.
Such a position to be in. It's just like, what do you say?
It's the curse of us creatives. It really is. It's a great life lesson, because what then went on after was a really good life lesson as well. But it would have been nice just to sit there and accept all the shit and agree with everybody else and just go right and give me £500,000. I just couldn't do it. I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I've always, my dad put me up to work for a living, and if the work wasn't there, I'd be working in McDonald's, or I'll be an Amazon driver. There we go. That's what we're doing now. But it was, it was a terrible thing. So we did that, and I was all like keyboard warrior, and like, we're going to be. Basically, what I did was I went online somewhere and went, we're going to be the new Hedkandi. And that was enough for them to go, that's passing off. That is a copyright case. You have just said you're going to be Hedkandi. So what they did was they took us to court, because the artwork, the guy that did the artwork was the same guy.
Yeah.
And they claimed that was there. And intrinsically, you can't get away from it. Hedkandi is all about the artwork and the music. But does anyone own those things as an actual trademark?
Yeah.
And that's what the court case was about. And when you have a really vague court case like that, that basically just means the only people that are getting rich off that are the lawyers, because it's like, well, it's yes and it's no. There's no real, that's a wooden door. It's a wooden, it's like, oh, who does? So we spent 3 months in court. It cost us over £200,000 as a new business just launching. £200,000, and it cost Hedkandi over £500,000. And what happened off the back of it was that the person that had been doing all of this at Hedkandi, the person who I had the biggest disagreements with, the person above him at the Guardian Media Group had been off on sabbatical. Didn't know all this was going on. He came back and he was like, so the guy that runs the whole thing and created it all has left. We've got a bit. In the meantime, this guy had signed 2 or 3 R&B artists for over £1 million.
Yeah.
We've lost £1 million on this new project. We've lost half the staff from over here. And we're in for about £500,000 on a court case that it doesn't look like we're going to win. We actually won the first court case, and they then appealed it. And the great thing about going, if you've got lots of money, you can go to court and you can carry on fighting and stop that business from working while you just carry on throwing money at it. Even if you lose at the end, it's a staring contest. And that's what happened. They were like, they relaunched their case against us, and we're like, here we go again. But the guy came back and he went, right, you're fired. I will now meet up with Mark and see if I can smooth this over somehow. They even, to the point when I left, when I left, the guy turned around to me and went, I could have put some money behind the bar for your leaving, dude, but I didn't. This guy that I had, I was like, I went, do you know what? I'm taking everyone out for a drink. Fuck you. And he even turned up and I bought him a drink.
No.
Come on. Sometimes the best thing to do is... Anyway, so, and what happened off the back of that? What happened off the back of that was the Ministry of Sound swooped in and went, there's a bargain. We like that label. And they bought Hedkandi from Guardian Media Group. And a lot of people don't know about what they basically just see is that I left and Ministry of Sound took over. There was this whole 6-month period in between where sort of the Guardian group and the people, it's not so much the Guardian group, it's the people they employed. Yeah. And the people they employed did some real damage to that brand. And ultimately I left because of that. And Ministry just do what Ministry did, which was they spotted a bargain and they swooped in and went, we'll have that. And they took it and they do what they do with it. They made it, they took it to the next level. Is it where I would have gone with it? Possibly not, but they're a company and they're in that business to make money, and to make things commercial and successful. And they did that in spades. And as much as people, there was always an alternative. By then, we'd launched Fierce Angel. I then basically licked my wounds. We got a little bit of the money back, but ultimately the company that I walked out of Jazz FM with and said, right, this is our new company, was killed. We had to lay everybody off because we'd run up debts of 200 grand on legal stuff, and we only got half of that back. And we hadn't been able to release a CD because we were injuncted and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So you kind of like, it was like kicking the bollocks after kicking the bollocks. And at that stage, I then made a decision. Ministry, called up, and at that point, we're like, could you, see yourself coming back? And some of the team, after, because I never had jobs from them, then went back to Hedkandi with Ministry, and they were like, could you see yourself coming? And I was like, I don't know, but I think I've done the working for someone else. I don't play well with others to begin with. I am an absolute nightmare, and we've maintained a very good relationship with Ministry all the way through. And the first thing that comes up in the pub is like, yeah, we'd never get on together. We'll hang out together and we'll go out clubbing and whatever. But Jesus Christ, we would never give you a job. You're a nightmare to work with, Mark. And I said, I think great creatives are, unfortunately. They're those people that I was only tolerated at Jazz FM because I was making them lots of money. It's like there's the lunatic. He just does what he does. And Ministry went on to do that thing with it and make it very commercial, very successful. And we kind of launched Fierce Angel. And for anyone that ever, complained that Hedkandi was too commercial, Fierce Angel was always there because we were far smaller and still sticking to what, those initial things were.
Yeah.
Far less successful, I imagine. The house took a lot longer to buy, but it was, and that's the thing with music. That's, there's never any right or wrong about things. Ultimately, unless you physically own the thing, everyone can sit and complain about music or it being too commercial or this, that. Well, do you know what? Launch your own label or go and find somebody else that is doing something you enjoy, because it's out there. And if you're suddenly disenfranchised with that, don't moan about it, because it's never going back the way it was. It's on that trajectory now. That's the way it's going. So go and find something else. For every at that point, for every Hedkandi, there was a Defected, or there was it's all of that. There's music is out there, and it's a wonderful thing because there's lots of it. Some would say too much these days, but
I was going to say there's so many new labels out there now. Like, most DJs will go and run their own label. It's got to be really competitive as well, especially for like Fierce Angel.
It is. I mean, we've very much. I mean, basically, we took Fierce Angel no longer do compilations. Are a nightmare. You have to license. I had to look at the returns on our compilations the other day, and you're like, we gave you a £300 advance. You've still not paid that off. It's incredibly difficult. You've got so much. It's almost like music pollution now. There is, you need to go and find things and look for playlists and look for, because it's everywhere. It's not like in those old days. In the old days, 20 years ago, when we had compact discs, it was marvelous. You put compact disc out, had 24 tracks on it. Never couldn't buy any of them. They're 10 quid each, I tell you, on vinyl. And that was why Hedkandi worked, because it was that, like, oh, look at this. I still think that, there's a massive market out there for curation now. I think if you look at what people are doing in the market, Defected are having it away at the moment. They're probably, because of their size and because of their weight, and the things, Glitterbox at the moment is spectacular. But they're backing it up with the music side as well. And they've become much more like a Strictly Rhythm of the old days, where they're just signing great records. And every so often they'll get one that goes out and is massive, but there's a weight of music out there across a number of styles. And the fact that he's like Simon Dunmore survived so long in the business. I mean, we go to Simon in the old days, like we'd have a Hedkandi called blah, blah. I want 6 of these records, please. And he'd be like, right then. Well, we put 6 of these on there and stuff. And it's great to see. That is a prime example of what happens when one person with a focus runs something. He's been, he's had his ups and downs, but he's been in the business over 20 years, and they're probably never doing as well as they've done right now, because and Simon is a very singular vision person. If he doesn't like it, or he's not interested in it, or he don't want to do it, he just doesn't do it. And that's kind of how you have to, run these things, unless you're doing something massive and commercial.
I think like Hedkandi as well, with Defected, they have that really great family element as well. Like they're all quite close. Even with the new artists, they get them in, they make them feel really wanted and welcome. And that's why they've all got that bond and why they work so well together.
Spoke on Hedkandi, which is the most interesting one for ages and ages. Fierce Angel basically took up about 15 years. We released a number of compilations. We've got some great artists on the roster. We've given it a rest for 2 years because I got called back to Hedkandi. That's the interesting thing about that, was that the ministry obviously have moved on their recording side to Sony Music. And Sony are kind of looking at a much bigger picture, and ministry is very interesting for that with the compilations and various bits and pieces. Hedkandi, not so much. To gear up a company like Sony to get interested in the returns that Hedkandi potentially would bring in, because Hedkandi needs to go back to being a boutique label. It's unless you're going to make really horrendous big club compilations and just use the name. And it's not, ultimately you could use any, it's really about the tracks. Hedkandi needs to be about the brand. So to take that brand back to where it needs to be, to a smaller, cooler thing, like labels like Midnight Riot, like Glitterbox, that's not high on their agenda at the moment. And I was invited to sort of come back and consult on the 20th anniversary parties. And off the back of that, the company that work in ministry to provide those parties, they did them for a year. They did them incredibly well. They weren't that interested in continuing on with it, because it's a lot of work. You had to take care of the socials. You had to take care of everything. It wasn't just a case of, hey, we're having a party, we're going to sell 2,000 tickets. There's still a lot of work to be done with Hedkandi and, sort of put into it. So I said, I'll do it. And, again, Ministry of Sound, they know exactly what they're doing. They're like, okay, let's get him to do all the work, because he's still quite enthused about it. He's still, and that was, and fair play to him. We sat in the meetings and they said, do you want to, have a crack at this again? We've kind of, we've done as much with it as we want to do with it at this point. And Sony are going to do what they are going to do with the music side. Maybe there's an angle that, we haven't thought of, and off you go and play with our toys, because they are their toys. And it's been very interesting. Obviously, we could have done a hell of a lot more. But 2019, we did the 20th anniversary. And it was almost like going back in time. The only reason I stuck with this through a whole year which was, hey guys, let's promote a brand you don't own for the next year while you can't make any money out of it, was because that year before, just before all the COVID kicked in, what I saw on those dance floors, the reaction and the atmosphere made me think there's something there. It was about, and it was, we had over 35 generally age group on the dance floor, but the atmosphere was ridiculous. It wasn't just, we go to clubs and everything's a bit, it's great. But this was electric. It was like, and so we said, right, okay, let's do it. So Fierce Angel was having a little rest, and we're looking at a number of different ways of how we skin it. But, everyone's been having a little rest this year, hasn't it? So,
exciting stuff. So hopefully there's a lot more to come from Hedkandi, because I didn't want to say it when you was talking about Ministry of Sound, but when they did take over, they did make it a lot more commercialized, and they did take it to the next level for a certain amount of years. I feel like the past 3 or 4 years, it's kind of dipped off a bit, which is probably why they brought the man back himself to try and get back.
I just think, and times change as well. I think, you get to a point where you've either got to invest an awful lot of time and energy into sort of trying something, and that they've gone through a number of different sort of versions of Hedkandi, and the artwork's been there and then it hasn't, and then it's generally difficult because the music now is in one place and the events are in another. Trying to get all of those strands of the brand back together to do something cohesive, where you can see where a glitterbox works because you have the tracks out there to set the scene, you have the occasional compilation, then you have the events, which are the big thing, and you've got the merchandise, and it's very much a whole cohesive. You can indulge in it in however you want. If you don't want to go to a club night, the music's there as well. And the fact that, Hedkandi's been in existence for 20 years, it just means that there are 1,000,001 Hedkandi playlists on Spotify that are nothing to do with Hedkandi. And there are 1,000,001, Hedkandi playlists on Apple Music and on YouTube. You throw a rock and you can hit a Jason Brooks picture and someone who's done a Hedkandi mix. And, it's kind of because the brand's been that long. And it is amazing to think that after 20 years, a brand is still, regardless of all its different incarnations, it's still very, very strong in the market. And what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, is get back to that original 8 years or so and tap into that. We want to go back there. To some extent, it's not about trying to be trendy or put new records on it or whatever. It's almost about being a heritage brand. It's about being a Cream, or it's about being, God's Kitchen, or all of those real heritage brands that we knew and loved. And if there's a way of re-engaging people with those that were once there, and then bringing new people in, you've only got to look at what Clockwork Orange have done with their brand. The guys there, geniuses. They put heart and soul into it, and have come back with some absolutely massive sort of festival of events that are, not aimed at anyone under probably 35 years old. And that's kind of, it might not be that cool to think about it, but there is a market, there's a group of people out there who loved and enjoyed all of this music. And it, to a great extent, it's become our Motown, or it's become our, what did your mum listen to? What did they love that they used to go out dancing to? These, the things change. And, I still enjoy a night out, and I'm 50. So there.
Amazing. So, Mark, our partners at Ibiza Bible love to know all the hidden gems about Ibiza, the amazing stories, what goes on there, because it's unspeakable. There is no words for that island. And I just wanted to pick your brain because you've been there countless times.
I think Ibiza Bible are being a bit challenging here, because anyone that knows Ibiza knows that when you leave the island, you're given a piece of paper to sign, which means that various Ibiza terrorists can come and shoot you in your house if you talk about anything that goes on in certain places on that island. It is. I mean, don't you know what? I've had weirder times back in London sometimes, but that's probably the people I hang out with. I
think that's just English people in general.
It is. it's a great thing. I mean, it is sort of like it's this one place, and when people used to sort of try and describe it, I've been going there since '88, and you kind of go, well, it's kind of for a short period of time, it's somewhere that everyone comes together from all different countries, and all different clubbers, and you get to see the best of everyone and the best of everything, and every night that you could possibly want to go to is there, you know, if that's your style of music, you know. And I think, you know, if Hedkandi really takes its inspiration from anywhere, it was very much the parties that we used to go to back in London back in the day, which were Malibu Stacy, which is a place called the Hanover Grand, amazing place, and Pushka. These are very polysexual, very inclusive. And then you go to Ibiza and you go somewhere like Manumission, which, you know, probably before Cirque du Soleil, or before that, you know, that element of show, where it's not just the DJ, it's everyone. Everyone feels that they're part of theatre, essentially. And that was what Manumission did. You know, I would toss up on, you know, telling you who any of the DJs I listened to at the event were, but I could tell you all about the suitcase that would walk across the dance floor with a pair of legs at the bottom of it, you know, and just, you know, and some of the things that went on there, and, you know, the show and the spectacle of it, and the fact that it then went on to space afterwards for the Carry On, and the fact that we could go on to space for the Carry On with any fit state, you know, it was spectacular. And in the early days when we launched Hedkandi, and this was, you know, kind of the island, it's become a little bit gentrified, let's say, you know, that real island, but we would drive around in a hire car that would give back in like 6 pieces. So here is your car back. We rolled it. You know, we met someone in space, and he said, "Come with us. We're going to a party." And we jumped in his Peugeot 106. Absolutely ruined it, and drove down to a cove somewhere, which is probably now a very expensive beach club. And I just remember driving across all these stones and getting out and walking out into this sort of hippie thing with children and dogs, and you're just like, what day is it? And where am I? And what time is it? This was just going as a tourist. Then we got Hedkandi. Obviously, Hedkandi opened a lot of doors for us on the island, because, you know, you get into the inner circle as such. And I ended up one of the best places that we ever did on the island. There was part of the Manumission thing was the El Motel, and the motel was on the Ibiza town side, and it was, I couldn't even navigate. I could probably walk to it now using, you know, but I couldn't tell you how to get there. And because you always were like, I know where we're going, follow me, and we're just going to walk there. And we went there with a shopping trolley full of banners once, because we used to do a party in the basement for a girl called Gail, and they used to do nights called Filthy. And it was about the second year of Hedkandi, and we were down in the basement, and Nikki Bell, the singer from all the Cahill records and stuff, she used to be a dancer there. Like years later, when we were sort of doing a gig together, she went, I remember you because I was dancing beside you when you were DJing and everything was exploding and stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. But there was, yeah, so the El Motel, you know, they would have a tiki bar on the roof. They had Johnny the Dwarf who would let you in. There were rooms that were used for God knows what. You know, I think there was a sex dungeon in the basement, everyone used to say. I never got to see it. It was just, and you try and tell people about it now, and they're like, nah. You're like, no, really? That's right. Literally, we were sitting in a room with a massive rider of vodka and all sorts of, you know, transvestites and strippers. And you kind of look back now and go, the best years of my life. Because it wasn't manufactured. It was very, very, it was all, you know, it was just amazing. But yeah, we kind of went out there the first 2 Hedkandi CDs, and they opened so many doors. Like the guys in Ibiza town had the rock bars guy called Jason. He ended up owning SVV Hotel, where Hedkandi took up residence. And the friendships and the people that we met in those early days kind of just went all the way through. And it's something that only really happens on Ibiza. To the point where, you know, we kind of a few years after that, we then get into we're running a big club night, El Divino, and you're trying to get rid of close to 800 people at 6 o'clock in the morning because they're all following you out the club. They're like, where's your villa? And you're like, we're not telling you. Like, come on. I don't know, if you ever go back
the villa parties in Ibiza are just something else. It's just away from the clubs, but it's the stuff that goes on there.
See, we had this double-sided thing, which was I'm kind of trying to run a business at the same time as not going, come on, man, everyone come back here with me. To the point where my wife almost divorced me. If she was in the room now, she'd come on screen and go, yeah, that was the point that me and you were nearly done. That we had this Khaled, who owned El Divino, had given us this amazing villa. It was like 12 bedrooms, overlooked the bay, sunset, gorgeous infinity pool. He's like, this is how much money you're making me at El Divino. Please come and stay in this villa for like, a few weekends. So we came and stayed. I literally must have got very overexcited and told about 200 people where we lived, and they all came back. And the problem with villas in Ibiza is that they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So generally, when you're coming out of a club, it's really easy to get there. Someone's always driving. You get 6 people in a car, or there'll be a taxi that will take you. 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, when you're really bored of people, not so easy to get rid of them, and not so easy to get a taxi for them either. And literally, my wife, I was like, yeah, it's all great. It's fantastic. I've done an amazing gig at Elderman, and this is all brilliant. We love everyone. And I'm just going to go and pass out now on the bed. And my wife is finding people hiding in the bushes. And she's got like 12 bedrooms. So you're going around knocking all the bedrooms. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. And there's people hiding there trying to get back in again. And she literally must have spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours getting rid of everyone. And I've never been forgiven for it. To this day, and this was about 18 years ago, to this day, she is like, if we get somewhere, we're not telling anyone where it is, it's 2 bedrooms, and that's it. And no one's coming back ever. And I'm like,
I love Mark. She's got the ultimate ammo on you right there.
She has. But yeah, we'd have those. We got into this thing where we had a villa somewhere else, and what we used to do was stop at the coffee shop, and we'd all have a drink or a beer at 6 a.m. Go down to there used to be a little bar just right on the corner, El Divino at the Roundabout, and we'd all sit there and have drinks until everyone kind of passed out or drifted away, and then we could jump in a taxi and go back to our villa without anyone following us, because it was just like, and you're kind of like, you want to. Ibiza is a dangerous mistress where, you want to just, let's do this and keep doing it and carry on and go home on Wednesday. It's Saturday now, and we were always, I was always lucky that I either had to come home and run a business and do things, or function or deal with people or count money, for God's sake, because it kind of it saved me from a lot of going down that rabbit hole. I do it.
You either get you either find the best part of yourself, or you find the worst part of yourself in Ibiza.
Oh, employing staff in Ibiza, that's an exciting proposition. It's like, we used to have to go out there and find people and sack them. Like, hello, hello. So you were supposed to pick me up from the airport, but you've been out on a 3-day bender. Right, let's have a chat, shall we? You walk into a flat and they're like, and they literally would look at you and go, no, we have been behaving ourselves for 3 days. I'm like, that looks like Pablo Escobar's table there, like you've just run a cloth around. Now, I've been I'm an old man, I want to go to bed, I'm done. And it's equal parts. People, some people are at their best, as you say, and some people are at their worst, and it's a wonderful place. It says.
Right, Mark, I've got one final question for you about Ibiza, and that is, even though considering space and a lot of the clubs have changed, what would be your favourite venue or bar or club or anything in
El Divino?
Wasn't hard, but
I mean, now obviously it's Leo now, and it still retains a bit of what it had, but that club was exactly the right size, It had the most amazing VIP. I mean, actually inside, you turn the lights on, it was an absolute tick. The sound system was atrocious. But when, that magic happened, you turn the lights off, you put the disco balls up and you put the people in there and you sit overlooking the harbour, looking up at the old town, and the sun would come up literally through. I mean, it made me cry now thinking about it. But the sun would come up through the windows. You'd be dancing on the stuff. Absolutely amazing. That's probably the one thing I miss about the island is that venue and the ability. It was just a great clubbing venue. It was now it has to be super expensive and even VIP service on that terrace was affordable back then. Now it would just be ridiculous.
Yeah.
That sort of real estate for what it is now, you'll just never get back again unless someone, opens something. I think Manumission at Privilege was mind-boggling. Like, just for me, whereas something has always been about the show. Yes. And the amount of attention to detail and the presentation, and I'm nothing against one amazing DJ and an LED screen or whatever and that vibe, but for me, I like theatre. I'm with you. We did a Winter Wonderland thing at Canvas years ago before it all got knocked down, and I literally just sat there and went, we've only got 10 drag queens. We need another 10, making that list of going, how many of those? We need another 10. If I could have got an elephant and a couple of hippopotamuses, I would have. We've got, because it was Winter Wonderland, we have got the trees set of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Yes! We're going to put lights in, and we're going to have people in the roof throwing snow on everybody. And that, to me, that is part of that whole. Maybe it's the music lends itself to that as well, in that it's really happy and really up. But Manumission, to go back, not so much go back to the club itself, but to go back to that night, oh my God, and the terrace at Space, again, which was the site of another, I sat there with a very famous DJ, and I sat there, I was quite happily amusing myself. Probably been awake for longer than I should have been, and I was sat there, and they'd probably charge you millions of pounds, or I'll get in trouble with the Dolphin Squad. But I had all the plastic straws out of the cup, and I made myself a fishing rod. The sort of thing you do when you're on your own, sitting in the club. I made myself a fishing rod, and I was sitting there fishing, and it was really well made. Had a little reel on the side and everything. And someone came out and tapped me on the shoulder. I'm not going to say who it was, but it's a very famous DJ. He went, "What are you doing?" I went, "Fishing." He went, "Really? You caught anything yet?" I went, "Not yet." But, he went, "Do you mind if I have a go?" And we sat there talking and fishing. And it was yeah. And again, that's your Ibiza, it's we had an onion eating contest. Seemed like a good idea at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
I really want to know who the DJ is now.
Oh, no, I'll tell you.
Mum's the word.
Mum's the word, especially for him. But yeah, I mean, it's silliness. And the good thing is you've got, you supposedly you've not got any responsibilities or whatever to come back to, whereas at a weekend you're that's the thing with Ibiza. I think if you pace it right and time it right and work out your nights right, you can it's not easy. It's a young man's game. I will say this. It's very much it. And I think now there's other ways to enjoy it and so forth. But yeah, there are the ones that come up are the more ridiculous ones.
In 2019, and me and 18 friends went there, and we decided to do 14 events in 7 days, which was the worst idea I've ever done. Oh my good God. We did.
How were you when you got back?
Not human.
It's like, yes, Taylor's going to need a holiday. Yeah, we know he's been on one. Let's call that research.
My mum was like, "How did you get on the flight with that ID? Honestly, it doesn't look anything like you anymore."
Things like that. You've lost 2 step. Right. Hi there. Sort of vampire. It's The Walking Dead. I mean, that's also one of my. I try now. Actually, my new game now is to be more sensible than everybody else, because it's actually more fun looking at everyone who's ruined, and you're sitting on a plane and going, "Ooh, DC-10," and they're sitting there and they have their own unique smell, and they're kind of like, like, and it is like The Walking Dead, like just snapping their teeth every so often because they're so thirsty. Would you like some water? And I've done it with friends as well. We go out and I did it the last time last summer. We went out and we had a massive night out, and I actually stayed. I had about 4 drinks, mainly because we were drinking in, Ibiza town and whatever. Going, 30 quid for that? No, I'll have some water. Thank you very much. And 2 of the guys I was with, and I was DJing the next day as well, so you kind of got to be a little bit complimentary. But let's just play. 2 of the guys I was with didn't make it the next day, and it was kind of their company, and they should have been out, and I was just working for someone else, and I was just like, and you're really smug. When you're really smug, like, well, I was in bed, and so. I was up this morning. I had breakfast. I ate a sausage before I got up. And that's kind of, you just have to, I think it's always going to be there in different ways. I think probably had a lot more fun. I've had the fun that I should have had out there, and I will have measured doses of that fun with the right people. It's all about the people you spend it with and stuff like that. And that's the great thing about Ibiza, is there are some truly amazing people that live on that island.
Yes.
And do, and do things, and we're still in contact. They're friends for life, as long as that life will be while I keep going out there. But yeah, I mean, and it is an amazing, when we can get back to doing what we do, it's going to be even more I think we're going to have a whole period of realizing what we missed out on.
A worldwide party, I think, is going to be, really, isn't it? Right, Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
A marathon. I was like, how are you going to talk for an hour?
My jaw hurts from laughing so much. But honestly, thank you so much for coming on today. You've been an absolute pleasure. I'm so excited to see what else comes from Hedkandi and Fierce Angel.
Thank you very much.